After a quarter century doing professional landscaping, I've seen it all. I've planted thousands of plants, and let me tell you, some have been absolute stars, and others have turned into total nightmares. These are the 10 plants I will never, ever use again, and I'm willing to bet at least one of them is in your yard right now. So stick around, because I'm not just going to tell you what to avoid. I'm going to give you the pro-grade alternatives that will save you time, money, and a massive headache. For 25 years, my job has been creating beautiful, functional, and long-lasting landscapes. You learn a thing or two in that time. You learn which plants thrive and which ones just survive. But more importantly, you learn which plants fight back. The plants I'm talking about today aren't just fussy. They are agents of chaos. They're the ones that looked so perfect in the nursery pot, but went on to cost my clients thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars in removal and repairs. These are the botanical bullies, the garden thugs, the plants that will take over your yard, damage your home, and break your heart. I made these mistakes so you don't have to. We're counting down the 10 worst offenders, and for each one, I'll share a horror story from the field and give you a rock-solid alternative that gives you the look you want, minus the nightmare. Kicking off our list is, without a doubt, the single worst ground cover I have ever had the misfortune of dealing with: bishop's weed. You might know it as goutweed or snow on the mountain. It's often sold as a vigorous, fast-spreading ground cover for shady spots. Let me tell you, vigorous is the understatement of the century. This plant is a monster. The real problem is what's happening underground. Bishop's weed spreads through an incredibly aggressive and brittle system of rhizomes. These white, spaghetti-like roots create a dense, suffocating mat just below the soil, choking out absolutely everything in their path. Native wildflowers, perennials, even your lawn, nothing stands a chance. I've seen it push up through thick landscape fabric, asphalt, and cracks in a concrete patio. The real nightmare starts when you decide you want it gone. You can't just pull it up. If you leave one tiny fragment of a rhizome in the soil, the whole colony regenerates, sometimes even angrier than before. Getting rid of it is a multi-year, soul-crushing process. I had one client who got a free clump from a neighbor. Within 3 years, it had consumed their entire perennial garden and jumped the property line to terrorize 2 neighbors. It turned into a legal mess, and the total cost for my team to excavate the top 6 inches of soil across 3 yards was just astronomical. If you need a tough, spreading ground cover, for the love of all that is green, plant something like wild strawberry or creeping phlox instead. Wild strawberry is a native that provides a nice green carpet, cute flowers, and berries for wildlife. Creeping phlox gives you a stunning carpet of spring flowers and spreads politely without being a menace. Both will cover the ground without trying to take over the world. Next up, a plant that drapes the walls of prestigious universities and gives old buildings that timeless look: English ivy. It is the definition of a wolf in sheep's clothing. People plant it for quick, evergreen coverage, but the problem is, it does its job way too well. English ivy is an aggressive climber that smothers everything. It uses little aerial rootlets that wedge into any crack, holding on with incredible strength. On a brick wall, this traps moisture, leading to decaying mortar and expensive repairs. On a tree, it's a death sentence. The ivy girdles the trunk and competes for light, water, and nutrients. But the real danger is the weight. I've been called out after storms to deal with beautiful, mature trees that were literally pulled down because they were covered in decades of ivy growth. The ivy acts like a sail, catching the wind and adding thousands of pounds of weight until the tree just fails. As a ground cover, it forms a dense green desert with almost no value to wildlife. Getting rid of it is a battle. You have to cut the vines at the base and then painstakingly pull them off, and it will keep re-sprouting from any piece left behind. A far better choice for a flowering vine that covers without destruction is a native honeysuckle, like trumpet honeysuckle, Lonicera sempervirens, or even a climbing hydrangea. A climbing hydrangea is a slower grower but won't damage your brickwork, and native honeysuckles offer beautiful flowers for pollinators without the destructive tendencies. For a tough ground cover, a hardy perennial like yarrow provides a feathery texture and flowers that pollinators love, and it won't try to strangle your prized oak tree. If you want to attract hummingbirds, you've probably seen trumpet vine. Its big, bright orange flowers are undeniably beautiful and a magnet for pollinators. That's the lure. That's how it gets you. But planting a trumpet vine is like inviting a demolition crew to your property and telling them to have at it. This vine is pure power. Its stems twist into thick, woody trunks that can crush a wooden fence. Its aerial roots damage siding and brick. But the true terror is underground. Its root system is incredibly aggressive, sending up suckers 30 or 40 feet away from the parent plant. And its roots don't just sucker, they destroy. I had a client who planted one to cover a sturdy backyard pergola. Within 5 years, the vine had started to splinter the 6x6 posts and sent roots that found a seam in their sewer line, causing a backup that flooded their basement. The removal was a nightmare. It took a backhoe to pull out the main stump and years of pulling up suckers that kept emerging. The pretty blooms were not worth the thousands in repairs. If you want a beautiful vine for hummingbirds, please consider a native honeysuckle vine, like Lonicera sempervirens. It has similar trumpet-shaped flowers, is beloved by hummingbirds, and it behaves itself in the garden. The idea of a bamboo screen is seductive, a fast-growing, evergreen wall of privacy. But this is where you have to know the difference. There's clumping bamboo, which behaves, and there's running bamboo, which is the stuff of nightmares. Most of the cheaper bamboos sold at big box stores are runners. Running bamboo, like those in the Phalastiches genus, spreads via underground rhizomes, like bishop's weed, but on a terrifyingly larger scale. These rhizomes are tough, sharp, and relentless. People think they can contain it with thick plastic root barriers buried 3 feet deep. I am here to tell you the bamboo will eventually win. I've seen it go under and sometimes even through these expensive barriers. Once it escapes, it's game over. The rhizomes will send up new shoots everywhere, your lawn, your driveway, and your neighbor's yard. It can damage patios and crack foundations. A client installed a running bamboo screen, and within a few years it had invaded the neighbor's yard, leading to a bitter dispute. The only real solution is a full excavation with heavy machinery, which destroys everything. If you want the bamboo look, you must seek out a clumping variety, like those from the Fargesia genus. It will form a dense, beautiful clump that slowly expands, but it won't send runners to terrorize the neighborhood. Now for a plant that might make some folks upset because it's been one of the most popular shrubs in America, Japanese barberry. It's tough, deer-resistant, and comes in beautiful shades of burgundy and gold. For decades, it was the go-to for hedges and foundation plantings. Unfortunately, we know better now. The very things that make it tough also make it dangerously invasive. It forms dense, thorny thickets that are impenetrable. Underneath, it creates a humid microclimate that is the perfect breeding ground for ticks, including the ones that carry Lyme disease. Studies have shown that areas with heavy barberry infestations have significantly higher tick populations. But the invasiveness is the biggest issue. Birds eat the little red berries and deposit the seeds everywhere. Before you know it, barberry has escaped your garden and is creating those tick-infested thickets in nearby woodlands, outcompeting native plants. I've worked on habitat restoration projects clearing acres of barberry that all started from a few bushes in a nearby subdivision. So while it may be low maintenance for you, it creates a massive problem for the environment. There are so many better alternatives. If you want that deep burgundy color, try a 9-bark like summer wine, Physocarpus opulifilus. It's a native shrub with gorgeous foliage, interesting bark, and flowers that support pollinators. It gives you color and actually contributes to a healthy ecosystem. Okay, we're halfway through, and I have to ask, do you have one of these in your yard? Do you have a nightmare plant story of your own? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and honestly, hearing about your garden battles helps all of us learn what to avoid. It's like a support group for recovering gardeners. Now let's get to the second half of my blacklist. If barberry is the go-to for thorny, informal hedges, privet is the king of the formal, sheared hedge. It grows incredibly fast and has dense foliage. That's why it's been a landscaper's staple. The problem is, if you're not relentlessly shearing it 2 or 3 times a year, it reveals its true nature, an invasive bully. Many species of privet produce clusters of dark purple berries. Just like with barberry, birds feast on them and spread the seeds far and wide. The result is that privet has become one of the most problematic invasive plants in our forests, shading out the understory and preventing native trees and wildflowers from regenerating. I once worked on a large estate with hundreds of feet of immaculate privet hedging. It was stunning, but the property bordered a nature preserve. For years, the crew kept it perfectly sheared. Then the property sold, and the hedge was neglected for just 2 seasons. That's all it took. It exploded with berries. The next spring, the preserve was carpeted with thousands of privet seedlings, a problem the local conservation authority is now spending tens of thousands a year to manage. Your low-maintenance hedge became a massive ecological burden. A fantastic native alternative for hedging is Yaupon holly, Ilex vomitoria. It's an evergreen, takes shearing beautifully, and produces red berries that are a valuable food source for native songbirds. Unlike privet, it belongs here. This one might be surprising because who doesn't love azaleas? They're a quintessential sign of spring. But in my 25 years, I've come to see them as high-maintenance divas that cause more frustration than they're worth for the average homeowner. The problem with azaleas is they're incredibly picky. They demand acidic soil, consistent moisture but perfect drainage, and protection from winter wind and harsh sun. Their shallow roots can dry out in a flash. They are also a favorite food of deer, who will happily browse them down to sad, leafless sticks. On top of that, and this is a big one for families, all parts of the azalea are toxic if ingested by pets or humans. I had a heartbreaking situation with a client whose new puppy got very sick after chewing on their azaleas. The vet bills and the stress were awful. They paid my crew to remove every single one the following week. For that burst of spring color without the drama, a classic lilac is a great choice, incredibly hardy, and their fragrance is iconic. Another fantastic pet-safe option is Weigela. It's tough, comes in many varieties, and gives you beautiful blooms without being toxic to your furry friends. Here's another plant that wins people over with its charm. Lily of the Valley has delicate bell-shaped flowers with one of the most beautiful scents in the plant kingdom. It's a classic, old-fashioned ground cover. It is also dangerously toxic and ruthlessly invasive. Like bishopsweed, lily of the valley spreads via relentless underground rhizomes. It quickly forms a carpet so thick it chokes out everything else, native trilliums, ferns, you name it. It doesn't share space, it conquers it. But the invasiveness is only half the problem. Every single part of this plant, the leaves, stems, flowers, and especially the little red berries, is highly toxic. It contains cardiac glycosides, which can cause severe illness or even be fatal if ingested. This is not a plant for a yard where children or pets play. A client's toddler was found playing with the bright red berries from a patch in their yard. After a frantic trip to the hospital, they decided it had to go. Eradication took 2 years of completely smothering the area. For a fragrant, charming plant for a shady spot, there are safer options. Consider sweet woodruff, Gallium odoratum. It has a similar delicate look, spreads politely, and has a lovely scent when its leaves are crushed. If there was ever a poster child for a bad landscape plant, the Bradford pear is it. For decades, it was promoted as the perfect street tree. It grew fast, had a neat shape, and was covered in white blossoms in spring. It was a classic case of being too good to be true. The Bradford pear has 3 fatal flaws. First, the flowers, while pretty from a distance, smell awful, often compared to rotting fish. Second, and most critically, it has an incredibly weak branch structure. The branches all grow from a central point at a narrow angle. Once the tree hits about 15 or 20 years of age, it starts to self-destruct. In a storm, these trees literally split in half, dropping massive limbs on cars, houses, and power lines. I have made more money cleaning up storm-damaged Bradford pears than from any other single tree. The third flaw is its legacy. The original Bradford pear was supposed to be sterile, but it cross-pollinated with other Callery pears, and the offspring are now aggressively invading natural areas. These wild pears are thorny, thicket-forming trees choking out native species. This tree is so bad that many states have now banned its sale. If you want a beautiful spring-flowering tree, plant a native dogwood, a serviceberry, or redbud. They offer beautiful flowers, have strong structures, and provide value to local wildlife instead of smelling bad and falling apart. We'll end with a plant that's been a staple of modern design, maiden grass or miscanthus. It's prized for its graceful, arching form and beautiful feathery plumes. It provides height, movement, and winter interest. It's also becoming an invasive disaster in many areas. For years, many of us thought the popular cultivars were sterile. We were wrong. It turns out that when you plant 2 different cultivars near each other, they can cross-pollinate and produce viable seeds, which revert to the aggressive wild type. Those beautiful plumes carry thousands of seeds on the wind for miles. These seeds are now popping up in natural meadows and roadsides, where they outcompete our native grasses. I saw this firsthand, where a beautiful drift of maiden grass escaped into an adjacent meadow, displacing the native grasses crucial for local birds. The landscape feature we planted for beauty had become an ecological contaminant. While some newer cultivars are truly sterile, the risk of cross-pollination with older varieties makes it a gamble. The good news is, our native prairies offer spectacular alternatives. If you want the height and structure of an ornamental grass, there is nothing better than switchgrass, Panicum virgatum, or big bluestem, Andropogon gerardi. They belong here, provide the same texture and movement, and their seeds are a vital food source for birds. So there you have it. 10 plants that have caused more headaches than they're worth in my 25-year career. The common thread here is a failure to look at the big picture. They were chosen for 1 or 2 traits, like fast growth or pretty flowers, without thinking about the long-term consequences. They are plants that create work, expense, and ecological damage down the line. The most important lesson I've learned is this: the key to a great landscape is putting the right plant in the right place. That means choosing plants that are not just beautiful, but also well-behaved, non-toxic, and beneficial to the environment. By avoiding these 10 nightmares and choosing smarter alternatives, you can create a garden that remains a source of joy, not regret, for years to come. Thanks for joining me on this tour of my landscaping blacklist. I hope this helps you dodge a few bullets in your own yard. If you found this helpful, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're all learning together here. And be sure to leave a comment below with your own plant horror stories. or maybe a suggestion for a future video topic, like the best and worst mulches for your garden. Now go out there and make smart planting choices.